There has been multiple sources on these quote-unquote encounters, these UFOs. Now, do we believe it's something from extraterrestrial? No. But these two, one worked as a drone engineer. The other is a high-ranking official that wants to remain anonymous. This is the email that I received from someone showing that these two sources could be exactly what is true. Now, we talked last week about them actually wanting to scour the skies because this is the U.S. drones looking for something and trying to protect us. Well, that story may actually be true. Let's dive into it a little deeper. And then when we dive into that a little deeper, we're going to talk about the dangers of it and how we prepare for something like this if we do see something like a WND or a EMP or a nuclear strike. That's what's been talked about. And this is coming out more and more and more. Let's talk about these two experts and what they said, this engineer and this top-ranking official. And then we're going to talk about the 5 things that we need to survive and make sure that we can prepare our family. Let's dive into these stories today. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. Today we're going to jump into these 2 stories about what these officials are saying dealing with what's happening in our skies. Very strange reports, you know. I mean, this is not something that you have not seen, we've talked about. But I want to bring up 2 new reports that showed something a little bit different than what we've been looking at. Also, we're going to talk about the 5 things that we need just in case we see something like a nuclear strike or EMP or something of that caliber. How dangerous is it and what we should be doing? Now, first and foremost, these things are typically happening around big cities and big infrastructures. It's not happening in places like where I live, which I'm thankful for, but at the same time, that means you in the city, you in these metropolitan areas, you right outside of these urban areas and these big suburban home structures, you better be ready and make sure that you're prepared for the things that go on. Now, let's talk about the strange reports first from the 2 military analysts and also the specialists. And then we're going to dive into what I think we should be buying right now and putting up for safety. This was emailed to me this morning from someone who watches us and who had this information. It says, intel from a verified high-level source with top secret special access clearance just dropped a bombshell. Now, this was originally shared by Next News Network, and the thing is this: when we get news in and when we hear stories, we try to find out as much as we can about them. My goal is to tell you things so you can learn, so you can gain wisdom, but then on top of that, prepare for anything that may come. Like we talked about, prepare insurance, basically. So let's keep on going. It says, this is a bombshell that what is actually these mysterious drones doing across the U.S. These are our drones, tracking gamma rays linked to possible WNDs or massive counter-terror operations. The Office of Global Access, the OGA, a shadowy 3-letter agency, has deployed advanced surveillance assets to hunt for stray nukes or mass casualty weapons hidden in the East and West Coast. Now you think, well, that's preposterous. I mean, they've kind of debunked some of that. No, they really haven't. What actually has been said is the government, who knows about your $4 you spent on Venmo last week, can't tell you what the drones are. No, what it is they know what the drones are. They're just not wanting to disclose that to us because I believe it would cause mass panic and mass hysteria. Now, that being said, where are we seeing these? We're seeing these off the coast. We're seeing these on coastlines, or we're seeing these in major metropolitan areas. Now, the scary thing is this, and this goes right into the next story, but what we're not hearing could be for quote-unquote our own good. I understand, so people won't panic. However, when people are not panicking and they're thinking about their shopping list, if something like this does take place, people are not prepared. So I believe that what we need to learn is there are bad players and there are some bad things that are trying to transpire, mind you, before January 20th. I think that has a lot to do with it. So that, mind you, it's trying to happen before January 20th. And if that's the case and no one's talking about what actually is coming out of these drones and what they're actually doing, it's a big deal. Now I want to go to an engineer, and he had a little snippet that someone shared online. And I want you to just listen to what he said. He said there's two types of drones that are flying right now. And this is a guy who worked on Apache helicopters, that worked on manned and unmanned drones for the military. He says, I am an expert when it comes to all things flying in the stratosphere of military. He said, what you see with the red and green lights, he said, those things are typical drones. Those are U.S. drones. Those are the ones that are looking for something, surveilling areas, and they're the ones that have regulation on them based on what we have. He said, now we have some unmanned drones, and they're not flying here. He said, but for the ones that fly in our areas that are getting information, that is the red and green lights. They look like little drones or bigger drones. He said they come in all shapes and sizes, but those are ours. He said, now, the ones that look a little bit more orbital, the ones that don't have any lights on them that are red and green that match up with our regulations, the ones that we can't understand how they're going or what they're spreading, he said that is the ones that they don't know what it is. And he said the reason the U.S. government is not talking about it is because of mass hysteria. He said, but those red and green ones that are the government's are actually looking and trying to find gamma rays and trying to find things of what these orbs are doing and what these other mysterious drones have been up to. He said it's not the fact that our U.S. is not telling you something. He says the fact that they're trying to find something that they may not can find. He said there must have been a credible threat, and that credible threat now has the military in not a panic, he said, but in a scuffle. Now, that's from two top guys that deal with drone and aerial military equipment. Now that's very probable. And if you remember last week, I told you there was another story that said that's exactly what they're doing. They're looking for protection, and they're trying to make sure drones are trying to look at the skies and see what's going on if there's attack coming towards us, almost like a defense. That's not what it's doing. It's doing the exact opposite. Instead of looking up to the skies to see what these, what could be coming our way, it's actually looking down at our populace and looking down in America to see what's actually already here. Now, the congressman last week, or the senator last week, when he talked about the Iran drone plane, the kind of like the mother ship, that ship did leave Iran about a month or two ago and was unseen for over a month. So this could possibly be both correct. It could be a little bit of both. Now, they're not sitting off the coast of New Jersey. But what I'm saying is what we're starting to see is some of these questions being answered. Now, would I love for someone to come out and say, look, it was just a joke, we were a bunch of college kids having fun? That would be amazing. But I think there's something more sinister and disturbing than what we've been taught. That is no national threat. I don't think the drones are itself is the national threat. I think that's why the government is so easy to be able to say that. They don't believe the drones in the sky should be shot down, or they don't believe that it should be a national threat, because it's not. Because they know about the drones in the sky. It's them. The thing is, what are they trying to find out of what has happened with the other drones, or what they have put on our earth, on the coastlines? How severe is this attack? Now, we don't know. It's all alleged. But when you have two military analysts who are not tied together, who do not probably even know each other, from two different sects of the military, they're saying literally the same thing, it's something we should pay attention to. Now, that brings me to the 5 things. I'm not saying time is running out. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying for the best insurance that you can have, you need to make sure that you're prepared. Now, 5 things that I would make sure that I had for survival. When it comes to threats of nuclear war, or an attack on certain areas, or an attack on infrastructure. Remember, especially if you're in these cities. First of all, you need to get out of the cities and get in these areas that are a little bit more rural if you're trying to save yourself and make sure that you're safe, because it seems like all the things that are attached to someone wanting to cause us harm are always in the main cities. They're never in like rural Oklahoma, or rural Texas, or rural Missouri. I mean, they're just not. But these things, these situations, the drones, the reason you're seeing more of them now, and everybody's starting to see them now, is it may be the U.S. government looking for something that they haven't yet found. And they've gotten security threats, so now they're trying to figure out what they're looking for. So it could be a very big catch-22. Now the 5 things. Well, number 1, unless you have a nuclear bunker. And a lot of people, of course, does not. I would imagine just 1 or 2 or 3% does. In America especially. In other countries, it's very common. But if you don't have a nuclear bunker, what are the things that you should be doing? First of all, you should make sure that you have an inside room that can be shut off pretty good. No windows, no doors. Almost like tornado preparedness. You know, back in the day when we were in tornado areas and high storm areas, we have an area in our home that we always said, okay, we can get here if we had to, and we can be safe. So first you need to make sure you have an interior room. But what you need to make sure of is you need to have ways to seal off doors, windows, and any of exterior air coming in. So now we don't want this to happen, but we need to be prepared for it. So number one, you need to pick up blankets. You need to pick up plastic sheathing, things like what painters use when they lay it down, like bisqueen, real thick bisqueen. You need to look at silage tarps, things that are heavier meals. And you need to have duct tape. You need to have a lot of silicone. You need to find ways that you can seal off doors and windows to the best of your ability. And when you start sealing those stuff off, you're like, I can't get everything. That's right. But you can cut your airs off and make sure those ventilations are covered up. Like your air duct coming in can be closed up. You can make sure that your doors and windows are covered as much as they can be with other sheets and blankets and duct taped off. You could use bisqueen. Now, is that going to save you from everything that's outside this exposure? Probably not, but it's a good chance of making sure that you are trying to protect yourself. So you need to have extra blankets, extra quilts, extra bisqueen, extra duct tape, and things to seal off our doors and our windows. Think of everything that you need to close off from the coldness in the winter. You just need to 10 times that. This practice has worked. There were studies done that showed that if you were not in direct blast, if you were in exposure elements to where there was places that were pretty close to you that went off, that you could protect yourself to a pretty good extent by just sealing everything off. And all the drafts in your home, make sure they're closed off, along with the air filtration. Any kind of filtration coming in your home, close it off. Now, another thing you need to look at is a Geiger counter. Number two, a Geiger counter. A Geiger counter or some kind of radiation detector is something to show the exposure levels that you would be taking in, inside and out. A Geiger counter you can buy online for literally dirt cheap. They're not expensive. I mean, like, under $100, $30, $60, $80. Buy one that's dependable, that's highly rated. But a Geiger counter would be excellent to have to make sure that you are controlling your exposure. Thirdly, I would pick up some potassium iodide. Now, it comes in pill form and it comes in little droplet forms. We have both. Potassium iodide, what it does is actually not protect you per se. It's not some kind of miracle chemical to cover up the exposure. It helps mask your body. It masks your thyroid. It helps where it cannot consume that exposure of radiation. A lot of prepper places like My Preparedness Supply, all those sell potassium iodide, or you can just go on Amazon and buy it yourself, or you can probably buy it in town somewhere. You need to buy an organic or non-GMO version. Try not to buy some kind of one that's got a lot of stuff in it. Buy the droplet form that goes on your tongue, and buy also the pill form. There's nothing wrong with having this. So we've talked one, things like quilts, sheets, extra bisqueen, duct tape, things to get closure to your home as much as you can, tighten it up. Silicone. And then secondly, we talked about the Geiger counter to get the exposure levels and know exactly what you're dealing with. Third, of course, would be the potassium iodide tablets or the droplets. So that way you know that you can protect your body as much as you can when it comes to exposure. Now again, we're talking about not being directly affected, like as in a major blast. We're talking about having the exposure levels as they come from the blast. So you need to understand that if you're in these cities, I still say get out, because this kind of stuff is not going to protect you if it's something major. But I am saying if it's not cataclysmic and you're in the levels of exposure, these are the things that you need to have. Now, number 4, of course, food and water. We have practiced, and again, we practice 7 years of survival, meaning we want 7 years worth of things that we are needing. Now, does that mean you have to have that now and you're not going to get that in the next day or so? But I would challenge you to pick up some freeze-dried foods that's in a canister that's already 3 to 5 day meal plan kit for each family member. So if you have 5 family members, you buy 5 of those. Now, on top of that, they can get expensive, I understand. If you can't have ready-made food, then you need to make sure that you have canned goods, canned protein, have canned fish, have a way that you can open it. Make sure it's something that's ready to eat out of the can if you had to. Because remember, if the craziness happens in the world, like they're saying, like when you hear WMD, you understand what that is. That is mass destruction. Now, is that going to happen? I hope not. They also use the words mass casualty. We need to understand what that means and the dangers of it. So you need to have the food that you're needing, and I'd challenge you to have at least 3 to 5 days. But if I'm being honest, I think you need a few weeks worth of food. Now again, we're talking you need to have 6 months, 12 months, 7 years. I mean, there's never enough. But it comes to a point where let's at least try to get 5 to 7 days worth of food. That may be some canned foods, and that may be based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Make sure you can eat it without heating it or cooking it. So if you're canning your own food, make sure you have the things right there to use. If you are freeze-drying your own food or you have freeze-dried food, all you need is water. I love utilizing freeze-dried food. Some of those ready-made packets, again, we freeze-dry a lot of our own food, but we have bought a ton of freeze-dried emergency preparedness food. You can buy these at Sam's. You can buy these at Costco. You can go below. There's a link below to, I think, My Patriot Supply and Legacy. There's all kinds of brands that you can purchase. You need to look at buying some of those and put up. All it takes is you mix in a little water with it and you've got a meal. It may not be the tastiest meal. It may not be something you actually want to eat, but there's nothing better than knowing you have safety, security in your home without having to go out of it. Think through that. If you've just sealed up everything and you've got to be stuck in your home, the last thing you want to do is not have access to food and water. So make sure you have access to food and water. Now, number 5, one of the biggest things. We have clothes that is basically vacuum sealed, that's not exposed to what we're dealing with our elements, like the clothes we have on now. So we keep extra clothes completely sealed off in a vacuum sealed, like freezer bags almost, to where they're not exposed. So number 5 would be hygiene items. We keep our clothes from undergarments all the way to socks, to hats, to extra garments that we need that has not been affected by the outside world. Especially if we're going into somewhere, I don't want to take tainted clothes in. So we have extra clothes that is completely sealed off. We also have hygiene items. We keep a lot of stuff on hand. Things like hygiene wipes. Remember, if you're not able to just have this hot shower and electricity is running like it's supposed to, and you're not trying to run the water because you're trying to conserve, hygiene wipes is a huge thing to have. Making sure that you have a bucket just in case something goes wrong with your sewage and you can't use the restroom. You have to have a way to use the restroom. It's like a camper toilet. Now, it sounds nasty, but you have to realize what kind of scenario we would be in if we see what they're saying these drones are looking for. Now, does that mean this is actually happening? It doesn't. But why would you want to just say, well, I'm just going to wing it, and hopefully they're wrong and I'm right? Why don't we say it like this? Why don't we just prepare for it, and that way if they're wrong or right, it doesn't matter because we're ready for it. And if we are wrong, then I've got stuff put up for next time. If we are right, then we're going to be one of those places that has what they need without having to go out and expose ourselves to something that we don't have, something that could cause damage to us. Now, other things, and we'll talk more about this because I have a big announcement coming in the next few days. I've been talking about this big announcement for about a month, but we need to go through some of these videos because I want to bring you something and show you something that's very, very important to me. And I'll be doing that in the next coming days. But things like games, things like art, things like a few sweets here and there, things like you can do with your family. You have to remember, we have portable DVD players, we have portable TVs, we have battery-operated, solar-generated things, because if you have to lock down in your home, the last thing that you want to do is not have the things that keeps us clear and sane in our mind. I challenge you to have a Bible. Have some reading materials. I'm going to show you something. I cannot wait to show you. I'm always telling the secret before then. But I want to show you something that's going to be very impactful and has been very impactful in my life. And it's all because preparedness. I want to make sure that I have an insurance policy versus this kind of stuff. And what I mean by that is having the things I need to prepare. So are these drone stories real? I think they're pretty serious. I think we need to take them serious. I mean, they're coming now. You're seeing reports from California. You're seeing reports from Arizona. You're seeing reports from all these border areas, even in Washington State. Now, why are we seeing these on the coastline? It kind of goes along exactly with what they're saying. Remember, a lot of our ports are not protected as much as we want them to because a lot of our ports are actually owned, and parts of them, by different countries. Now, these are the things that you need to purchase before January because this looks like this is going to take place. If anything's going to take place and it gets worse, I'm thinking they're going to try to do it before Trump comes into office. Now, do I hope this is all just a bunch of ruckus and it doesn't mean anything? I hope so. I hope I'm completely wrong. But if I'm not, why don't we just simply prepare and have these little things? It doesn't cost a lot to buy these few little things that we talked about. Number one, again, ways to seal off our doors, our windows, ways to seal off our ventilation, to make sure that we can tighten our home the best we know how. Number two, a Geiger counter, see what kind of exposure levels we're dealing with. Number three, potassium iodine, to make sure that we can protect our body from the harm that radiation can cause. Radiation hits our thyroid, it seems like more than anywhere else, and then of course that affects the rest of our body. A lot of our glands are, our endocrine system they call it, but like our endocrine system and so forth. So if we can mask some of that with potassium iodine, that'd be great. I think about my children, I want to make sure I have enough of that. Number four, of course, food and water. Have the things you need in your home so you're not having to go exterior to your home to get what you need. Number five, hygiene. Make sure you have an extra change of clothes that has not been in elements. Make sure you have soaps and body hygiene items. Things like extra toiletries. And make sure you even have a camper toilet, as gross as that is. We have to find ways to make sure that we're safe. Now, in a first world country, when we have all the technology in the world that we have, should we be worried about this? No. But when we have weak leadership and our world seems like it's fallen to pieces, especially in some of the areas that we have put ourselves in conflict that has the capabilities to do exactly what we're talking about, then yes, we should be worried about it. Guys, let me know your thoughts. I tell you, I don't want to ever freak you out, but I believe that if we don't understand what's happening, I'm scared that they're trying to keep us from freaking out and having panic. That way, they won't have mass hysteria. However, if we're not prepared, then you're going to have mass casualty. Let me know your thoughts on this story. God bless.
Be free, be free, be free.